This is Patrick McCullough, forecaster here at the National Weather Service office in San Angelo. And look at one of the biggest questions we actually get around here during the winter weather, which is exactly what type of winter weather we're going to end up seeing across the area. And it's certainly more complicated than it's just going to be 32 degrees here at the ground. At that 32, in fact, we can see snow, sleet, freezing rain, or rain, all depending on what's going on at 5, 10, or 15,000 feet above the ground. So let's take a look. First of all, it's snow. Snow is our easiest forecast and actually causes the fewest problems across the area, unless, of course, we see something like we saw last February when our snow totals just got completely out of control. In snow, and that's kind of the thing we have to talk about down here, in the winter around here, everything starts at snow at about 10 or 15,000 feet above the ground. It's just that cold up there, so all of our precipitation actually starts as snow. Now, what we're looking at here is what we call a temperature profile. So we see our 0 degree line down here in black, runs up to 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet, and then 15,000 feet above the ground. Now, what we have is our environmental temperature profile, which is the temperature of what's actually going on during a winter weather event. And in this case, we see that the entire temperature profile stays to the left or below zero all the way down to the ground, which means that that snow at 10 or 15,000 feet that's developing, and it develops all the time during the winter, stays below freezing, doesn't melt, and can get all the way down to the ground as snowfall. Again, that's the hard part, getting it all the way down to the ground as snow. Now we talk about sleet. Sleet are those little white pellets that will fall during the winter, much smaller than hail. You see them kind of stick in your eaves of your house or on the top of your vehicle, and it can accumulate in some quantity, but they're little white balls. For for sleet, it forms it develops at least. It starts the same way as snow does, starting snow at 10 or 15,000 feet. But in this case, as it falls, it runs into a little bit of a warm layer above the ground, maybe 7 or 8,000 feet above the ground, and will melt to those snowflakes into big wet raindrops. And then as the temperature drops below freezing once again, there's enough time and it's cold enough that those raindrops can completely refreeze into those little white sleet balls that are falling down to the ground. There's a difference between sleet and freezing rain. Nobody likes freezing rain. We all hate freezing rain. It causes the biggest mess across the area, especially on roadways. Freezing rain is not those little white balls, but freezing rain is that glaze of ice that forms on everything as the rain sticks on contact as it hits down to the ground. Again, it'll stick to your vehicle, stick to your windshield, stick on your plants, and when it sticks to roadways, it causes the biggest issues across the area. Now, again, just like everything else, it starts with snow at 10 or 15,000 feet above the ground, and as it falls, it melts. It reaches a warm layer at 5 to 10,000 feet above the ground and completely melts those snowflakes into raindrops. But as it gets down closer to the ground, maybe just that area right at ground level is below freezing, so there's not enough time for those raindrops to completely refreeze like sleet and come down to the ground as little white balls. Instead, they don't have enough time to refreeze, so it stays as raindrops all the way down to the ground. And with temperatures below freezing at the ground, those raindrops instantly freeze as they hit the ground, whether it's roadways, whether that's your vehicle, whether that's your windshield, or whether that's your plants or fence post or whatever else. It causes that glaze, that black ice that forms instantly. That's our biggest problem, and that's the thing we have to worry about mostly across our area. Now, again, we sort of showed you those temperature profiles, sort of the textbook cases. It's not what we actually see around here in West Central Texas very often. Now, again, in the Central and Northern Plains or the Rockies, the temperature profile is closer to textbook. It's below snowfall, it's below freezing. It's a pretty easy forecast. It's going to stay below freezing from 15,000 feet all the way down to the ground. For us, though, right on the edge of where it's cold enough to have winter weather across the area, we see a temperature profile more like this, where it's right around freezing all the way through 5,000 feet, right around 10,000 feet, and doesn't really get very cold till above 10,000 feet. This type of temperature profile right around freezing may actually change on an hourly by hourly basis. Certainly it'll change often through a winter weather event. And so we may see that wintry mix as the snow will sometimes stay all the way down to the ground as snow. Sometimes it'll freeze on a smaller layer and have time to refreeze back into sleet, or sometimes It doesn't have that enough time, and it gets down to the ground and then instantly sticks as freezing rain. That's more typical for our area down here with the temperature profile all the way up through 10,000 feet, right around freezing. And that's one of the things that makes it so hard to forecast around here when it comes to winter weather types. The other thing to keep in mind is that we have to get winter weather types right before we can start talking about winter weather amounts. Again, we use a kind of a ratio of 10 to 1 for snow, 2 to 1 for sleet, and a 1 to 1 for freezing rain, which means that for roughly a quarter inch of any type of precipitation, you end up with about a quarter inch of freezing rain, a half inch of sleet, and maybe 2 to 3 inches of snow. So the first thing we have to do when we're talking about totals of sleet, snow, or freezing rain across the area is get the winter weather types part right. And that means we're trying to forecast not just what's going on right at the ground with the temperature, but the temperature of 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, and 7,000 feet, and 10,000 feet above the ground, with a temperature profile that's often right around the freezing mark, and a degree or two can make a huge difference. And that's why it's so tough sometimes around here to get the winter weather precipitation amounts right, is because the types are so hard to get right in the first place. Thank you, and we'll continue to keep you educated.